Hello, I am Emily Penman. I am the MajorTim.space ambassador for 13 to 14-year-olds from 2021 to 2022. Today, I will be interviewing Kathy from the Buttercup Goat Sanctuary. Hello, Kathy. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Kathy. I'm one of the sanctuary assistants working at Buttercups Goat Sanctuary, and this is Maggie, who's one of our smallest goats, and Matt, who's looking after Maggie for me.
Hi.
And Matt's also my colleague here at Buttercups Goat Sanctuary. So we're looking forward to talking to you. We might have to let Maggie go in a minute because she's not used to office work, but we thought we'd let you say hello to her. She's better doing outside work like eating. So she might have to wander off in a minute. She might, but she wanted to say hello and to say that she's enjoying at the moment. She's enjoying seeing you on the screen. She's looking straight at you, actually.
Oh, so the first question that I have is quite a simple one. But what would your daily routine for taking care of the sanctuary and the animals that are there?
Okie dokie. Well, that's quite a long one. I can do it very quickly. Obviously it's very, very busy day. So first of all, we arrive in the morning. All the goats are still in bed because they don't like to be out in the wet. And because we've got so many, sometimes the bossy ones stop the not so bossy ones from going in the door. So if it rains in the night and the goats are all out, not all of them would get under shelter. So they have to all be put to bed. Then they have their breakfast, which we've made the day before, which is goat mix mainly and a grass substitute. And then they get let out into the yard where they've got hay provided for them all day. Haven't you, Maggie? Yes. And if any of them are poorly, we give them their medical treatment or do first aid, or we do general maintenance like foot care. And then at 11 o'clock, the public come in on 5 days out of 7. So we have to set up for that. So set the tea room up, set the gate up so that everybody can see all our leaflets and gets a welcome, and set our feeding station up for buying goat food that people can buy to feed the goats, and muck all the stables out, have lunch. And then we sometimes do office work, or sometimes like today in the afternoon, we've got a goat walk, which Matt is going to be leading today. With how many goats today?
5 goats today.
So only 5 today. We can take up to how many?
10's about the limit, but maybe a bit more. So
10, they go out on the site, which is quite big, for fun for them and fun for the people that want to go with them.
Go get you a new goat.
There we are. Maggie's going to go and she's squashing Matt at the moment. So she's going to go back to the yard to eat some more hay and cause havoc. She's very naughty. And then after that, when the public go, we have to clear up again and count all the money. And then if we're on night duty, we have to wait around until it's time to put the goats to bed. And then they go to bed. And then some of them have dinner and some of them have hay. That's it.
So a very long day. Another question I wanted to ask is, what special requirements do some of the goats need?
Well, some of them are quite old. And so when they're old, their teeth wear out because they're continuously chomping like this, backwards and forwards with their back teeth. So they're continuously grinding to try and to try and break up the grass that they eat, which is actually quite difficult to chew. It causes a lot of wear and tear on their teeth. And so their teeth don't last most often their whole life. So we've got quite a few old goats with hardly any teeth. So they have to have a liquid, well, not a liquid diet, but a very soft diet. So that's one requirement. Some of them, if they're rescues, have had bad foot care in the beginning. So they need specialist foot care from us. It's not just normal trimming, it's remedial trimming. Some of them have other ongoing. Here we are. We've got Nibble now.
No, we haven't.
Oh, no, we've got Princess. So this is Princess. I'll just show you. She's a Nubian goat. She's Matt's baby.
She's a very good girl.
She's not used to being in the office, so there we are, Princess. She's having a look at them. She wants to eat herself. On screen. Can you see she's got a harness on as well? So she's one of the goats that's going to go on the goat walk this afternoon. Right. We're going to have another one in a minute, but we have to try and stop them eating all the paperwork when they're in the office. So that's the big challenge. We used to have one that could actually undo the gate. You see the gate where Matt's coming in and out? We used to have one that could actually undo that. So, we've got Marmite now. So this is Princess's cousin, Marmite, who's also going on the walk. Just bear in mind, none of these goats have actually been in the office before.
That's not true. Marmite
has been in the office before. He's just about to eat the file to my left here. Who's that, Marmite?
Good boy.
He's actually really hungry.
He's a big dopey boy.
Yeah, that's right. His character is a bit dopey, but he's very loving. And he's just so excited. He's having a look at your picture because he doesn't look at computer screens, but that's all a new experience. That's right. She's waving at you, douchebag. What's that?
Oh.
There we go. He's trying to eat the chair now.
I think he's about to do a poo, actually.
Yeah, he might just be leaving us a little message on the floor.
Oh, yeah, there it goes.
So, there we are. We've got a little message on the floor. And another one. So we'll clear that one up in a minute. We're quite used to that. We have also.
I would say that I was about to say he's very well behaved, and then he left a dump on the floor.
Well, he's just being a goat, and to be quite honest with you, that's a very good thing that he's done that, because it does show everyone that goats cannot be house trained, so they should not be poop scoops. So goats can't be house trained. They should not be kept in houses at all because they will poop everywhere. And they will try and pull your curtains down as well.
And try to eat everything.
Yeah, well, they don't actually. That's actually a bit of a myth. They're just very inquisitive. So what they'll do is they won't eat stuff. They'll just pull it down. So people think they're eating it. What they're actually doing is just being really, really curious. Some of them are actually quite fussy over their food, believe it or not. It is a little bit of a myth floating around that goats eat everything. It's not that at all. They're very, very bright. They're very inquisitive. And so if there's anything different around, they will pull it down, shake it about, put their horns in it and do all sorts of tricks with it just to find out what it is. But most often they'll just leave it on the ground afterwards. They won't actually eat it. They can be quite fussy.
Yeah, I was wondering if you do get a goat that is quite a fussy eater, what would you feed it instead, or how would you try different alternatives of food?
Okay, so the first thing that would come into your mind if a goat was a fussy eater was, is there something wrong with it? So is there a health problem with it? Because obviously when we're poorly, we go off our food. So, I mean, that's the first thought that we would have. Because most of the goats, we give them really nice food here. So we buy in goat mix for them and horse grasses, which has been recommended for our goats by the vet. So we would wonder why they were being fussy to start with. We've got another one. Oh, so this is Jasper. And Jasper's really special because if you can see, he actually...
One ear?
No ears. He has no ear on the other side of his head. So it's the one-eared goat. Okay, he's very happy. He's totally got over just having one ear. But that is one of the things that we have to deal with here, is that we often have goats that have problems in their past. They might have had some sort of abuse or accidents. And quite often we don't even know what's happened to them. For example, when Jasper came, the people that brought him in told us they'd rescued him, which is fair enough. He came in, they couldn't look after him anymore because their circumstances had changed. But they said that they'd rescued him from some other people and he came to them with one ear. So we really don't know how he lost his ear. But the good news is, obviously, after having been checked by a vet, he's 100% fine. It doesn't bother him. He can hear. He's behaving perfectly normally, but somehow or other along the line in his life, he lost his ear. Now, that's only the outer part of his ear. He's still got all the inner part of his ear. So I don't know how much biology you do, but the ear is divided into the outer and inner ear. And basically this bit is kind of right on the edge of the ear, so he can still hear, and he's still got all of his apparatus in his inner ear, it's inner part of his ear. But yes, right. What were we doing? What was the last question?
Talking about goats, they were fussy eaters.
Oh, that's
and
right.
You said
yes.
some
So,
of them
yeah,
could be ill.
That's right. So we check all the signs that we know. I mean, I trained as a veterinary nurse, so I know, and all the other staff have been trained to check for things that might be wrong. So we check their temperature, and we check whether their tummy was turning over, because goats have got a first stomach called a rumen, which is continuously churning, and it does the job that our mouths do with chewing. It turns around like a great big sack, and it makes a gurgling noise, and we know we can listen to the noise. Oh, here we are. Someone else is here. Oh, this is Juliet. Juliet's here. Juliet's a very special goat. She has a bandana on which says, I'm very loving, but I bite. So Juliet is one of our goats that has a few behavioural issues. So she's lovely when you get to know her, but she has a red collar on. Good girl. So just to warn our visitors that she has a few behavioural issues, and basically it's just staff only that look after her, because she's had a trauma in her past. We don't know what exactly that was, but it does cause her to use her teeth a little bit too much.
Chiefs.
So she's saying hello. But that's Juliet. Very good girl. So she is lovely. She's
just misunderstood.
She is. I mean, it's like anyone that's had problems in their life, isn't it? They behave sometimes differently, and all they need is love and understanding, and then they will find a happy life for themselves again. So that's what Juliet's doing here. She's quite happy, but we know the limitations that she can cope with, and we provide those for her. So yeah, so with the food thing, again, back to that, most often they'll not eat because they're poorly. So we try and sort out what's wrong with them. If we think there's a veterinary problem, then we'll ring our vets, because none of us have trained vets here, but we're just trained to look for the signs of sickness and disease and injury. So if they were, I mean, most of them will eat. I mean, goats quite like their food, and normally when they won't eat, because there's a problem. So we'll either look at them and just go, oh, sometimes they get food stuck in their cheeks as well, because they chew so much, they get the food stuck there, and that sometimes stops them from eating as well. So I hope that answered that question.
Thank you. I was wondering also, what is the most difficult part of actually running the charity, the Goat Sanctuary?
Okay, so I think the most difficult part is probably that we haven't got enough room for everybody. So at the moment, the sanctuary is chock-a-block full. We've got 150 goats, and we're looking now to expand to a second site. We haven't found one yet, but we have phone calls from people all the time with goats needing homes. To be fair, a lot of them are due to people taking on goats without realizing how much of a commitment they are, and how expensive they are. But that is the most difficult thing, is saying, I'm sorry, we don't have enough room, and then putting people onto another rescue centre. I mean, we only concentrate on goats. So we have another one. Here we are. We have Bex. This is Bex.
Massive.
He looks a bit like a cow in profile. So he's black and white, like a Frisian cow. He's one of the big dominant boys. So he's quite high up in the pecking order of the goats. And he wears a purple collar, which means that when the public come in to buy food, they're not allowed to feed him. Because he's dominant, he tends to get push himself quite up in that. There we are. Push himself quite high up next to the fence and gets all the food. And then next day, it's right. I thought we'd lost the connection for a minute. So we put a purple collar on all the goats that aren't supposed to be fed. And mainly for that reason, they eat too much and then they get tummy ache. So there we are. What a handsome chap he is, aren't you? He's actually very, very affectionate. But yeah, he's quite a confident chap. And he lives with Posh. So we have Posh and Beck, surprise, surprise. Right, where were we? I keep getting interrupted by goats coming in the office. It's fine, we love it, we love it. Right, what was
It's the best surprise.
Oh, that's good. Well, we've got plenty more. We've got 150 out there. So, so that's the most difficult bit. The most difficult bit is actually not having enough room for all the goats that need a house, a home.
I was wondering, because you said that like there's different collars. Is there any other types of collars that you have to put on the goats to signal to the public?
Only the red collar, which means that they're not sociable, or the purple collar, which means that they mustn't be fed. There's only two colours. We try not to make it too complicated for everybody.
Oh, okay. Right, next I wanted to ask about how COVID has kind of affected the way that you manage the sanctuary and just how everything flows, you know what I mean?
All right, okay, so as you probably can imagine, it was pretty hard for us as well as everyone else. So we couldn't obviously have any of our daily visitors that come here 5 days out of 7. We rely on their donations at the gate, and also various experiences that we run, like Goat Keeper for the morning and goat walks, and obviously we couldn't run those. So financially, we were very worried, you know, how are we going to look after the goats? We did have some reserve, but not very much. We've got about 7 members of staff. 3 of us were furloughed, including myself. So it wasn't a great time. We're now welcoming people back. I'm very happy to see everyone. We're getting lots of people through the gate now, particularly as it's holiday time. So yeah, we're just, as with everybody else, we're hoping for the best.
How has like the goats have they had any reaction to COVID and not being able to see people as much?
That's a really good question. So we learned something really important during the time we were closed. We have every goat has a separate personality. We have shy goats, we have timid goats, we have goats like the ones that have come in the office who are very kind of laid back, easygoing and happy to experience new things. But the shy ones, we noticed some of the ones that are really timid actually came out of their shells a bit. So what we've done now is we've designated a goat and keeper only area in the yard. So those goats that don't like to be with crowds can just go to a nice peaceful place and have their day without being stressed. So it's not every goat, obviously, because most of them are really happy to see everybody. But just there's about, maybe about sort of between 10 and 15 of the 150 that we've got. And they tend to stay in the area which is goat and keeper only. So that was a very interesting thing that we learned as a result of COVID. The other goats, they saw everybody during the day. They saw our staff, not myself, obviously, because I was furloughed. But they don't seem to have come off too badly in terms of missing people, but they're very, very happy to see everybody again.
Oh. Another question is, because you described that the goats have different personalities and they're each unique. Do some of their personalities clash, and do you have to make an effort to keep some of them away from each other?
That's also a really good question. These are really good questions. So as I said, every goat has a different personality. So you are going to get goats that don't get along with each other. So most often what they do is they'll just keep away from the one they don't like. We've got lots of space out there. But what is really interesting that's happening constantly out there is that they have a very, very strong pecking order or hierarchical system. So I know I told you Bex was quite near the top. So he's one of the leaders. He's a bit like the Prime Minister in the goat world. So, well, not exactly probably, but he kind of rules the roost a little bit. He hasn't got the blonde hair though. Anyway, let's get away from politics. So yeah, they're constantly vying for one another, testing each other out, seeing which one's stronger, seeing which one's more dominant, and the pecking order is constantly changing. So what you will see out there in terms of sort of interaction, it's mainly pushing their heads together and testing each other's strength, and seeing which one is stronger. They tend to do that more. I mean, they might get on with the one that they're pushing against. It's just that they're trying to see if that one's, more dominant than the other one. The ones that don't get on, just unless they clash in one of the corridors, they tend to just avoid each other. But the interesting thing is the interaction in terms of the pecking order. So they're constantly trying to see who's stronger. I mean, the ones that are at the top at the moment are getting older. So the younger ones that are dominant will be testing the older ones to see when they're going to be stronger than them. Because one day, Bex, who's quite young, will be stronger than Vincent, who is our top boy at the moment. But Vincent's getting on. So Bex will be aware of how Vincent is doing every day. He'll be trying to test Vincent out, seeing how hard he can push. And one day, Bex will be stronger than Vincent, and it will be really easy for Bex to push Vincent out the way. So that's happening all the time. But I mean, they're not enemies or anything. They don't, as far as I can tell, they don't. But the ones that are, there are a couple that don't like other ones. Juliet isn't very popular. The goat I brought in with the issues, I think she's never probably been kept with other goats. So she doesn't really know social skills with goats. So she gets a little bit pushed around and stuff with them. So she's very special, as you saw. So we have to make sure, well, she comes to see the keepers quite a lot anyway. So she hangs out with us a bit more if we're around. And then she tends to keep herself to herself when we're not around. But she has her own separate pen. At night time, she's on her own in her own pen, which she's quite happy about.
Aww.
Yeah.
I saw this on your fostering kind of page on the website, but you said that if you want to foster a goat, that you'd always have to have two goats together.
That's right.
What is the reason behind that?
Because they're social, they're herd animals, so they're not used to being on their own. So they need at least one other goat with them. Yeah, they're kind of a bit like us. Most of us like to have at least one person, don't we? Not everybody. Some people don't. I mean, some very occasionally, some goats might. I mean, Juliet would probably prefer to be with humans rather than goats, but we're going to keep Juliet here because she needs a high amount of specialist love and care.
Oh. Because you mentioned that Juliet had her own little pen. Is there any other kind of goats that stay in specific places, or do you organise where the goats stay?
Okay, so they've all got their own specific pens at night, but some of them can sleep in 3s or 2s. We just notice their behaviour during the day, and we have a look and see who seems to be getting on with who. Because obviously, we've got nice big pens. So some of the pens are quite small, so they can only have one goat. But we've got some really big pens, so we prefer to put groups in. And then sometimes we have families come in. So we've got a group of a breed of goat called a boar goat from South Africa, and they came in as a nice family. So they all sleep together. And then we've got pairs that come in from homes that have always lived together. So we will put them in together as well, because obviously we don't want to split them up. And then obviously if we need a pen for any reason, we might just be watching goats all day, seeing who seems to like somebody. And sometimes you get really unlikely friendships from random goats. You look out and you go, oh, Oscar seems to be getting on well with, Fern. That's
Aww.
quite, there's 150 to choose from, and they'll just hang out together. And you'll go, all right, well, maybe we'll see if they want to sleep together. And sometimes they do. And sometimes as soon as you put them in the pen together, they start fighting. So it just depends on their characters and how they feel at the time.
This kind of connects to another thing that I asked before, but I just wanted to ask on any tips for fostering.
Oh, okay.
If anyone in the public wants to.
Okay, so fostering is
foster.
fostering is quite a specialized thing. We don't have that many fosterers because you need to have quite a large field. And unfortunately, most of us don't have a large field. Most of us live in smaller houses. And if we're lucky these days, we have a garden. And if we don't have a garden, we can't have a goat. But what you can do, and even a garden, obviously, goats bully all the plants in the garden. So you're best off having, we've got a minimum size for an enclosure for a goat, which we show potential fosterers when they come. But if you really want to have your own goats, you can adopt our goats. And then they become your little goat. Or we've also got a guardianship scheme, which you get a little bit more for your money. It's a little bit more expensive, but you can also, that gives you the impression that you own a goat as well. So just because you don't have a garden doesn't mean to say that you can't have a goat.
Oh.
Well, I mean, it does mean you can't have a goat at your house. it does mean that you can come and visit us, and then you can spend some time with your goat. Feed it, groom it, what have you. It depends on the level of guardianship or adoption that you've got. So the guardians get a lot of access to their goats anytime there's a member of staff here, and they just have one goat to themselves. If you're adopting, you might have 10 or 12 people owning your goat as well, and you can only come and see your goat when we're open. So yeah, that's different levels, but yeah. So the fosterers have to be vetted by us, have to have the accommodation, which we're quite fussy about, and then we own the goats. So if it gets to a point where they can't own them anymore, can't look after them because they're poorly, people themselves might get poorly, or they might have to move house or something, and they can't keep the goat. Then the goat will come back to us. So it doesn't keep. We don't perpetuate the chain of rehoming. So if one fosterer can't have the goat, they come back to us rather than being handed on from pillar to post all the time, because that's not good for them.
I don't know if you might have seen the news during lockdown, but in the Great Orme, on the Great Orme, there lives lots of goats there, and they've all come down into Llandudno town during lockdown because there's no cars there. And I lived there, so I got to see lots of them.
Oh, really? Oh, so were there lots of them come down?
And like you said before, when they ate every single plant, like in the gardens, they're all going into people's front gardens and eating all the plants.
I'm not surprised. That's because, they are quite clever goats. If they see that there's not many people about, I mean, those goats are wild goats, so they wouldn't be used to being around people, unlike our goats. So obviously, if there's no people around and hardly any cars, they're going to come down and see where the food is, because that's what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to sort of keep themselves together, keep enough food in their bellies. So if they can go somewhere else where there's new food, then they'll go. And obviously, not being used to people, they'll be more inclined to come down when there's less people about. So that's not surprising. I think you're very lucky to have wild goats around your place.
They do smell though.
Do they? Yeah, but it's quite nice when you get used to it. It's an acquired taste.
Acquired goat taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is all the questions that I've wanted to ask you today. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for answering them.
It's been fun. Thank you very much.